I'm Jennifer Chilek with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, here to talk to you about the good, the bad, and the ugly with regard to closed captioning. The ugly is where we'll start. A recent study that was done by 3Play Media of different institutions of higher education, private, public, big schools, small schools, came up with these results. Now, before I get into the results, I will, in full disclosure, let you know that 3Play Media is a company that sells captioning services. So know that going into this, that they have a vested interest to advocate for closed captioning, but it's not just them trying to make some money. It's a really good practice for a number of reasons that I'll explain as we go forward. The research study looked at all these different types of institutions and realized that most of them recognized that they're only partially meeting the minimum legal requirements for captioning. So if your institution feels that way, they're not alone. Another part of the ugly is that the reason that captioning isn't happening in a lot of cases, based on this study, was because there wasn't a general awareness that it was necessary or important to do. Over half of the institutions in this study said their approach to captioning is primarily reactive, or more reactive than proactive, meaning they're not doing the captioning ahead of time. They're only doing it when they're asked to do it. And that falls right into this number, which is 53% prioritize the captioning based on the number of student requests. Now, that means that a student has to request captioning for that piece of video content, and then the institution is going ahead and making it available to them. But that leaves open a lot of issues, including the fact that some people may wish they had it, but not take the step of asking. Some people may not have a quote-unquote recognized disability, so there is not really an avenue for them to go through to request it. So there are a lot of issues with taking this approach to captioning. That's the ugly. The bad is what captioning could bring to the table and is not in terms of learning. Going back to this study, 71% of students that were interviewed for this study without hearing difficulties use captions at least some of the time. Those students aren't going to be in a recognized situation to be able to request accommodations to ask for captioning. So if it's not even there to start with, then you're losing a whole lot of people that would use the captioning even though they may not have hearing difficulties. Like ESL students that find captions very or extremely helpful. And for those of us in Texas, when we think of the accent difference between a foreign student and a East Texas professor, a caption can sometimes bridge that gap very nicely so that the ESL student isn't trying to interpret the Texas accent of their professor or their instructor. Students use captions whether they're hearing impaired or ESL or not. Students use captions to help them focus. And this is the most interesting part of this study in my mind. They use it as a learning aid. They turn on captions and listen. They also can use it if the audio quality isn't great or if the instructor's accent makes it difficult for them to understand. And that can not only be a Texas accent, that could be an instructor that is a foreign born and has an accent and is explaining things that may not come through due to an accent. 75% of students said they use captions as a learning aid. And over half said it improves comprehension, accuracy, engagement, and retention. And that's what we're about in education. We need to figure out a way to get students engaged, get them involved and to get them to retain what's being taught to them, and captions help that in addition to meeting legal requirements. And if you're not sure, or if your institution is not sure if this is really important, take a look at some of the lawsuits that have been filed. Even things like CNN, University of California, MIT, but also OSU, Ohio State University, was sued because they didn't have in-stadium captions. It's a pretty universal thing, or it should be a pretty universal thing, that captions should be available on all kinds of medium, even in a football stadium. FedEx has been sued because its professional development for its employees did not have closed captioning. So there are all kinds of issues with this, not just academic focused, but professional development focused as well. And when we did an informal study of current and former Texas A&M University students and asked them about captions, these are some of the things that they said that they valued about captions. And it's interesting that a lot of this has to do with life and life getting in the way and being in a noisy environment, or having children running around, or accents, or a different ability to process written words versus spoken words. Also, it's interesting to talk about the ability to export captions for notes or to print as a handout. The good news, or the better news, is it's not that difficult, and we'll get to that just in a minute. But if you're still not sure, then take a look at where else it might be important to have captions, which is in a noisy environment. We took this footage in a metal barn talking about raising chickens in your backyard, and we had a poultry specialist there, and it was a lovely environment, but it was really, really noisy. See if you can hear what he's saying.
Yeah, this is Stephen Zeller, County Extension Agent, Kendall County. Backyard poultry and the things that you might consider if you want to start getting into the poultry business and have chickens in your backyard. Some of the first things you need to consider: are there any restrictions in your homeowners association, your city, or the county any restrictions that go with poultry in those situations? There are some cities around that have
but if you turn on captions, then it makes a huge difference.
On maybe no rooster, such as the one that's crowing in the background. So, you kind of got to check those things out before you get very deep into the process. Some other things that you need to consider when you're talking about the poultry project is amount of space it takes for a chicken. You need 2 to 3 square foot per laying hen. If you're going to build a chicken house for them, you want to have laying nests. You can do those with a traditional laying nest.
Another example of why captions can be really valuable are a noisy environment, whether it's in a barn or out in a field where there's wind noise and other types of things going on. We like the authenticity of having our subject matter experts in a real life environment, but that's not always the best acoustic environment. So captioning is important for many reasons. And the good news is it's really not that difficult, especially if you're using YouTube, because YouTube will try to caption for you. Sometimes it does a better job than others, but if you're in a decent environment with someone who is speaking pretty clearly, it at least gets it started for you, so you're not having to listen and transcribe the video. And because YouTube will do this automatically, all you have to do then is go in and edit what YouTube has done. It will do a voice recognition on what the speaker is saying, and you can go in then after the fact and do some editing. Put in some punctuations, clean some things up, change the spaces in the video, the places in the video where the text shows up. Sometimes it does a really good job It figured out Texas A&M. It even got AgriLife Extension. But my name is Jennifer Chilek, as you can see in the black box. And it wanted to spell my name out phonetically, which is obviously not great. So I had to fix that. Edits are always necessary, whether they're big edits or small edits. And here are some examples of some pretty bad closed captioning. And I'm sure you've seen this on TV if you ever have the closed captioning turned on, because it's doing it on the fly and nobody's doing the edits. You'll get some really weird stuff sometimes. And so YouTube gives us the ability to get that auto captioning, but then have the ability to go back and edit to make sure that this kind of stuff doesn't show up. It's important and it's not that difficult. So just do it. To close out, I'll give you this little song to get stuck in your head.
Hey, listen up to what I'm about to say. Captions help your content so many ways. People search words for videos they want to click. And with text, transcription gets your site many more hits. Oh, you guys need captioning if you want to see your ratings grow. You guys need captioning if you want to boost in your SEO. You guys need captioning if you feel it's just the right thing to do. You guys need captioning if you want to reach more views, then captioning is for you. You know that captions benefit the deaf. Yeah, but that's not all. Do you know who's left? Yeah, some viewers' English needs just a little help. Yeah, and some wanna read along for themselves. Do tell. You guys need captioning. A lot of viewers want to watch your video on a train. You guys need captioning. If they need to visualize the words that the speaker's saying. You guys need captioning. If they like your clip and wanna translate the text for their friends. You guys need captioning. You won't reach so many more viewers with captions on your content. Video will get you captions. Audio will caption it too. Video will get you captions. Stereo, let me read it now. Video will get you captions. Audio will caption it too. Video will get you captions. Stereo, you guys need captions. Now you know you want it done, so how do we make that real? You guys need captions. Take your videos and add some sweet accessible appeal. You guys need captions. We got the people, we got the tech. Just let us do what we do. You guys need captions. Let's go out and reach more viewers, cause captioning is for you. You guys need captioning if you want to see your ratings grow. You guys need captioning if you want to boost in your SEO. You guys need captioning if you feel it's just the right thing to do. You guys need captioning. Let's go out and reach more views, cause captioning is for you. Read along.